Since COVID happened, COV really is making a comeback.
Yes. We can't stop COV.
Yes.
But at least make an informed and educated offer. Is cash overvaluation making a comeback?
When we talk about cash overvaluation, we first have to understand what does it mean exactly. To put it very simply, cash overvaluation is the cash component that you have to pay if the valuation does not match the purchase price of the property.
Yes.
So to illustrate it very simply for you, if you were to purchase the property at maybe 450,000, okay, and the valuation came up to 425,000, basically it means your cash component or cash overvaluation is now $25,000. But recently, I would say maybe for the 1 to 2 years, Dennis, especially since COVID happened, COV really is making a comeback.
Yes.
Most of the transactions these days, I would say maybe out of 10, I would say 8 or 9 of them have a certain COV component. Why do you think that is the case, Dennis?
In simple English, right, it's just that the valuation is done by HDB.
Yes.
So HDB set a price on your HDB flat itself. So anything above the value that's determined by the HDB valuer is a cash overvaluation.
Yes.
What does it impact you? For this portion above the valuation, right, you cannot take loan for that.
Yes.
You pay cash. That's a simple
Yes.
term itself. So what happened was that before 2014, HDB sellers can first get the HDB valuation report
Yes.
from HDB. So we have got this report that says, hey, your HDB is worth 300k, 400k or 500k. And then from then, you negotiate with the buyer. Hey, HDB say my flat is worth 400k, for example. So, but I have nice renovation, I have nice view. I want to have COV about say 20k. That means he's trying to ask for 420k. 400 valuation from HDB plus 20k amount that he thinks that he should get. So this is a cash above valuation. So a lot of people complain. So in 2014, the government decided to change the game.
Yes.
So after 2014, you can no longer get the HDB valuation report in advance.
Yes.
You only get it after a deal has been set.
Yeah.
Why is this so? Because the purpose is to ask buyer and seller to exercise prudence when doing negotiation. Meaning that, alright, you negotiate without knowing how much it's worth. If the buyer is willing to pay a high price, it might end up paying a lot of cash above valuation. So the objective of this tweak in the system is to encourage prudence.
Yes.
So I think after 2014, and due to the cooling measures, cash overvaluation has become a non-issue.
Yes.
So much so that there's even a new term in 2014 that there's cash undervaluation.
Yes.
But until recently, that the volumes have been coming back.
Yes.
So see on the newspaper that now a lot of buyers are willing to pay for cash overvaluation. From the transactions that we observed for 2021, right? Now I think 5 out of 6 transactions have COV.
Yes.
Cash overvaluation. So this is quite a lot as compared to maybe 1 or 2 last time. The frequency has been higher.
Yes.
So now yes, captured the attention on the newspaper or the media. So that's why now we are talking about this topic, cash overvaluation.
That's correct. Yes. And this cash overvaluation comeback is actually not just limited to new HDB flats.
Right.
You can actually find it in more mature estates, like maybe say Tiong Bahru, for example, Toa Payoh. So why is it making a comeback? Okay, to put it in very simple, the reason, right?
Yeah.
In the simplest term, it is because the volume, or should I say the demand for HDB resale is making a strong comeback during this COVID period. The key reason is that for a lot of people who have been waiting on the sidelines for their existing BTO flats, and for people who are considering BTO flats,
Right.
they are deterred by the waiting time for these BTO projects, because what COVID has done is that it has impacted the waiting time for these BTO projects to come on, especially for people who are undecided at the moment, should I go for resale or should I go for BTO? But upon knowing that, oh, a BTO project may be taking a longer time to build due to COVID.
BTO takes a longer time to build, and BTO with more centralized location will need to go for balloting.
Yes, correct.
So these are two key factors.
Yes, and just to touch on what Dennis has mentioned, those BTOs in very good locations, like, or maybe very central locations like your Kallang Whampoa and your Toa Payoh, they always
Hot
tend
places.
to be oversubscribed.
Right.
Meaning to say, even if you have the intention to get a unit at this BTO project, you might not get it at all.
That's why in the mind of these buyers who's willing to pay COV cash overvaluation is because they felt that, hey, if I apply for BTO, I might not get the place. This is balloting. So this is this uncertainty factor.
Yes.
And plus the fact that now with COVID and the delay in construction,
Yes.
so you might not get your BTO on time.
Yes.
And now with the recent resurface of those foreign worker dormitory with those new COVID cases, although they've been vaccinated, but they got COVID again.
Yes.
So this will cause our foreign labours or supply to come down again. So this will have an impact on the
Construction.
construction time.
Yes,
So
definitely.
yeah, these are weighing on the mind of these buyers
Yes.
who don't want to wait.
Yes.
Uh,
As compared to actually buying a resale HDB, where upon agreeing on the price, right, typically the timeline towards the completion is about 3 months or so. So 3 months versus 3 years to
Yep.
5 years, I think for people who are a little bit time starved or who are people who have a more urgent need to move in, the 3-month option sounds better.
the time to build a BTO is about 3 to 4 years.
Yes.
But now with COVID and the lack of manpower, it might even stretch longer.
Yeah, it might
We
even
don't know. Yeah.
stretch longer.
Yeah.
So this is one of the ways COVID has impacted the demand actually. So with demand comes the volume of transaction increasing, and when the volume of transaction increasing and there's a lack of supply, we all know that whenever there's scarcity, right, it brings up value, and when it brings up value, that is where your COV comes into
I think
play.
what we have shared are fundamental reason why why these buyers are willing to pay COV. But there's one more last factor I felt also pushing this COV to be higher, which is the FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yes.
Because nowadays when you do viewing, there tends to be a lot of calls or viewers to go and view the HDB flats.
Yes.
So there's so many buyers and people are willing to offer. Viewer number one offer $1 above the valuation, then buyer number two offer $2. So and it goes on, becomes a norm that nowadays for 3 to 4 room flat, 20 to 40k COV is not uncommon.
Yes, it's not
Yeah.
a common actually.
For bigger flats or EM or for those newer flats, even up to 50k or more, it's also not uncommon.
Not to mention that if you are taking a bank loan in this case for HDB, there's a minimum cash component of 5%. So that's 5% cash component plus the COV that you have to pay. It can come up to quite a bit of money actually,
Right.
depending on what you're buying.
So do be aware of this FOMO factor, fear of missing out. So you have to be calm and not be overly affected by the quick or fast offer coming in.
Yes.
In a way.
But Dennis, if that is the case, right, how do I try to minimize my chances of COV or try to decrease the amount of COV I have to pay?
I think to be honest, paying for COV in this up market or good market is inevitable.
Yes.
But the key is to get educated, that means do your homework. Before you offer for that HDB or for that choice home that you like, do your homework. Although we are not able to get a valuation report from HDB, but you are able to do estimate or a check or research on the nearby transacted. Best would be the same block, similar type, similar size. So at a similar floor level, you are able to get this data from HDB portal as well.
Correct.
Yeah. So check on this data. So you have a range. You might not be able to get exact value,
Yes.
but you might be able to say for this 4-room flat in Hougang, previous transaction is about between 420 to 450k, for example. So at least you know that this range, what range is a fair price. Whether to pay above the value is up to you.
Yes.
But at least you are making an educated and informed decision. That's
Yes.
the key thing.
Yes.
We can't stop COV,
Yes.
but at least make an informed and educated offer when you are doing the negotiation itself.
Yes. But do keep in mind that for HDB published data, that the exact unit number will not be given
Yep.
for the
That's a
transaction
range
price.
for
Yeah, just a range of the level, and
Yep.
definitely no unit number is given.
Yes.
Meaning to say, if you see like a certain unit transacted at a much higher price, do keep in mind that this transacted price is already inclusive of everything.
Yep.
Meaning to say, COV all in, and if the unit was very nicely renovated, that was already factored in as well.
Right.
So just exercise that little bit of caution.
Right. So hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next video.
Yes, we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you.
Thank you.